Now, we all may agree that defining the notion of peace might be difficult. And the literature of peace suggests that peace can refer to the absence of violence, such as masculine rape as a weapon of war. And it can also be defined from the perspective that peace implies structural changes to address social, political, and economic injustice that may be at the center of violence. Now, how about measuring peace? So to answer this question, I would like to call upon Mr. Serge Stroobants, the Director of Operations for Europe and the MENA region at the Institute for Economics and Peace. Mr. Serge will be presenting the work of the Institute for Economics and Peace on measuring peace and structures that contribute to more peaceful societies and its link to SDG 16. Please.
Good morning to you all. Salam alaikum. Peace be upon you. I think this is the best way to greet people in the world. It's the best way so far I have discovered. To continue in the trend of the previous discussion, I'm married. I have a girl and a boy, no pets. I've been in the military for 30 years, and then I shifted to, I basically continue to do the same job, but from another perspective. Maybe something special, I was a former international, rugby international for my country, Belgium, when I was quite younger. I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't know if this is going to work. There we are. All right? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about 15 minutes about two of our latest publications. The first one being Business and Peace, where we look at the correlation between levels of peace, levels of negative peace and positive peace, and the evolution of business, the positive evolution of business. And the other one is the economic value of peace, that is looking at the investments that are made every year in violence and the containment of violence. So this is the Institute for Economics and Peace. So it's an Australian think tank based in Sydney, Australia. We have other offices in Brussels, where I live and I work, in The Hague, in New York, and related to New York also in Mexico City, as we produce every year a local, national Mexico Peace Index. We have quite an outreach on regular media and digital media. We also produce consultancy and reports for major international organizations, and we have been very fortunate to be ranked quite high on the think tank index in the past years. Thank you. Great. Thank you. So what I'm going to do today is talk about negative peace and the Global Peace Index we produce every year and we publish in June. I'm going to talk also about positive peace, which is a new concept that is looking at the institutions, attitudes to develop to make sure that human potential can flourish, and by doing so that business can flourish also. So what I'm going to do is look at negative peace, so the state of affairs of peace in the world, and the economic impact of being in a country involved in violence or not. Then I'm going to look at positive peace, which is looking to the future, how you can create sustained peace in your society and have a positive effect on your business. And at the end, I will try to make the link between both. So this is the architecture of my presentation today. The Global Peace Index is built upon 23 different indicators, 3 families of indicators. So we look at the impact of internal and external conflict. We also look at the measures of safety and security within societies, and then we look at the levels of the investments made in militarization. Those are the 10 most peaceful countries in the world, and you will see that a lot of those countries are alike. A lot of are European, rather small countries with a high level of economic development. This is the top 10 or the bottom 10 on the Global Peace Index. So those are the countries most involved in violence in the world. There is an effect of what we would call stickiness of peace. Those 10 countries that you saw in the top of the ranking will remain the most peaceful, and those in the bottom 10 will also remain the less peaceful for a longer period of time. But what we will see as we evolve over the years, those countries that are the most peaceful will only improve by less than 1% the levels of peacefulness over a period of 10 to 20 years. When it comes to deterioration of peace, we will see that this process is going much faster. And over the same decade, those 10 countries have dropped more than 13% in the levels of peace in comparison to those who are the most peaceful, or who only increased by 0.9% by doing so. So over the last decade, we have seen an overall decrease in peace, a global decrease in peace by almost 2.4%. 75 countries improved their levels of peace, 85 countries decreased their levels of peace. On our websites, you can access a map like this, click on any country, go into the granularity of the data, of the index, and use this as a basis for your own research or the development of your own businesses. Less than 5 years ago, this region where we are at the moment, the MENA region, was one in the top 3 of the most peaceful regions in the world. We all know why it deteriorated, why it became the less peaceful region of the world, and why it is still continuing to decrease in the levels of peace. And I think it's really striking to read the last comment on this slide to see that if you would extract the MENA region from our Global Peace Index, then we would see over 10 years trend an improvement in peace globally. So this region is really impacting the overall at the global levels of peace. Another couple of figures and the impact of the last 10 years. You could have comparable slides for any type of conflict that is affecting peace on a global scale. What is really important also on this slide is that almost 1% of the world population is displaced at the moment and having a positive impact, as it has been stated this morning, through migration, if migration is handled well, and if migration is seen as an opportunity instead of a problem like we are used to do in Europe since a couple of years now. This is the cost of violence. So every year, about 13 to 14% of the world GDP is invested in violence and the containment of violence. So this means that every year, every person on the face of this earth is investing to about $2,000 in violence and the containment of violence. So those figures can be reversed, and you can also look at the cost effectiveness of peace building. I don't have a slide on this, but I have the figures for this. Every dollar that is invested in peace building will give you a return on investment with a factor 16. So every dollar that is investment in peace building will create $16 in local economy. When you continue to use those figures, and you could see over there how the investments are made, you can also try to imagine what you can do by investing 1% of those 14 trillion and reinvest that in economy, and also what it represents. 1% of the cost of violence represents the global annual official development assistance. So every country in the world that is investing money in another country for development reason, this entire budget on an annual basis represents only 1% of the cost of violence. If you would take it to 10%, which is still very small, 10% of the cost of violence annually, this will be an equivalent to the global foreign direct investment. So every country, every business investing in another country, this global budget on a yearly basis is only 10% of the cost of violence. And then, I don't know if it's meant as a joke on the slide, but it also represents the economy of three, I would say being Belgium, three of the leading countries in Europe, so Switzerland, Denmark, and Belgium. So let's look at the performance. When we look at the Global Peace Index, which is looking at negative peace, which is the absence of violence or the fear of violence, we can look at some figures for the performance that is done. And we will see, and you can read with me on the slide, that countries having high levels of peace see a faster growth of their GDP per capita, see more investments coming into their countries. They also have a positive effect on the inflation, on the credit rates, and on the overall business situations in their country. So once, and then we can have a look at some of the details. So this is showing you the impact of very high levels of peace on the growth per capita of the GDP. Same thing for the inflation. Interest rates. Right, now that once we know what the levels of peace are worldwide, we would like to also try to define what is needed to create more peaceful societies, but also to create societies in which peace will, on a longer basis, evolve positively. So sustainable peace on the longer run. This is why we created the concept of positive peace, and we just launched the 2018 Positive Peace Index yesterday during the annual conference at Stanford University on positive peace. So there again, a map that you can use. You can click on every country and you can get into the granularity of the data. So the concept of positive peace is focusing on 8 different pillars. It's a systemic approach, so we look at peace as being a system. We do not look at the causal effects, but we look at the intent and the inputs that are brought into the system, every system being part of another system and holding subsystems also. So I'm not going to go into a 6-hour course on systems thinking, but this is how we approach it. So we look at those 8 different pillars and the interconnection between all the pillars. You really need to understand this as a permanent effect on all 8 pillars. If you would only invest in 1 or 2 of those pillars, so for example, and we have examples of this in Colombia in the past decade, where a lot of NGOs invested in business, invested in creating more jobs, invested in creating a stronger economy. This will not bring peace. It will just create more wealthy people investing in violence. So you really need to have a systemic approach and invest and have a pressure and have an investment in all of those pillars at the same time, and then you will see the system going to adapt, and then you will see the system reinforcing itself. And there again, in those pillars, you will see, and we spoke about this already this morning, you will see low levels of corruption, a sound business environment. We will look at governance also, a free flow of information and the respect of rights of others, and an equal distribution of those resources, to name only some of them. What we will see in countries with high levels of positive peace, we will see that those countries will develop some resilience. For example, looking back at Brussels being under a terrorist attack, or even Paris or other countries in Europe or within the OECD, you will see that those countries will just take the hit and then find their shapes or come back to some normality very quickly. In other parts of the world where you will find countries with lower levels of positive peace or lower levels of resilience, a terrorist attack like this will have a much larger impact on a longer period of time, and also a very negative impact on business. So we see a higher per capita income, more resilience, better environmental outcomes, higher GDP growth per annum, and better performance also on the SDGs. And the Institute for Economics and Peace is of course involved in SDG 16 and its evolution with SDG 16 Plus and the Pathfinders, trying to, so we already identified in a former publication how to measure and quantify the effects of SDG 16, and we continue to do so in the future with another publication that should be expected in the spring of 2019. So there again, when we look at positive peace and business, we see that high levels of positive peace will have a very positive impact also on the development of your business. And not only in those countries with having very high levels of positive peace, but also those countries which are low and medium on this index, but are improving on the index. So there are business opportunities, even in those countries not having a full or a highly developed level of positive peace. So there again, we see stronger currencies, better exchange rates, lower inflation. So this is about the evolution of the GDP, where we see a faster evolution of the GDP in those countries having high levels of positive peace. Same thing goes for the exchange rates, so stronger exchange rates in those countries also. Same thing goes for the credit rating. So all those elements will create a better business environment. Right, and now when you try to make the link and I'm almost done with my presentation, you will see that peace is creating business and business is creating peace. I mean, this is the systemic approach. You will not be able to develop more peace in countries in which there is no entrepreneurship, in a country in which there is no intention, as we have heard in the previous panel discussion, no intention to create more peace. On the other hand, business itself is also creating peace. And what we try to achieve is a shift from what we would call a vicious circle, in which lower levels of economic activity will lead to higher levels of unemployment, automatically more grievances, less resilience within the population, therefore also lower incentive to maintain peace and to continue to invest in business, and automatically you get into this vicious circle. What we try to achieve through to positive peace is to change this, is to have higher levels of economic activity, more investment, more entrepreneurship, therefore lower levels of unemployment, automatically lower levels of grievances, therefore more interdependence among population. This is a very liberal approach to international relations, I would say, and to the building up economies, and therefore a better incentive to maintain peace and harmony, because this is an environment in which your business can thrive, especially when you are an entrepreneur, and by doing so, automatically recreating higher levels of economic activity. There again, we see the impact of violence on the economy, and it's an exponential growth. So we see, as we are becoming less peaceful, or as we are moving along the index becoming less peaceful, we see an exponential impact on the economy and the levels of economic development. Same thing for business. So peacefulness brings more ease of doing business. Same thing for the density of business. So we see more entrepreneurship in more peaceful countries and countries with high levels of positive peace. We spoke about corruption and bribery this morning. High levels of positive peace will also influence the acceptance of this concept and the acceptance of bribery. And basically this is coming to the conclusion of my presentation. So both from the supply and the demand side, you will see a positive evolution in countries having high levels of positive peace, where from the supply side you will have an increased trust in governance and also third-party arbitration, which will be an incentive to invest more and to create more jobs and more business in some country. But also from the demand side, people will be more eager to invest and to buy the goods that you would produce also. All right, and let's finish by my propaganda slide. So you can certainly hook up with us on social media, and please visit our websites, where you will find those interactive maps, full access to the data, and full access to our publications also. So on an annual basis, we would produce 4 major presentations, which would be the economic cost of violence, the Global Peace Index, also a Global Terrorism Index that we are going to launch on the 5th of December this year, and the Positive Peace Index. Next to this, we try to also have 6 publications like the one on business and peace, to have a total of 10 major publications a year. And I will be here until Friday morning. So if you want to have further discussions on the work of the Institute, please do not hesitate to contact me. And once again, thank you for having me. Thank you for having the Institute at this conference.